Well, David, thank you so much for joining us today for this episode of Trash Talk. We really appreciate it. To kick us off, you've had such a varied career from leading huge organizations like SUEZ to building CIRQLR. Looking back, what first drew you into waste and recycling industry, and what's kept you passionate over the last 3 decades?
It's funny, I was thinking about this, and, you know, in the past, it wasn't really a conscious decision.
Yeah.
Most people I met in the industry over the sort of 35, 40 years I've been in the industry have ended up in the industry by chance, and that was really a little bit mine. So chance and football is my 2 reasons why I'm in this industry. So my dad worked in local government all his life, and he moved from Doncaster with me when I was very young to Grimsby.
Okay.
And that's why I started supporting Grimsby Town. And what was interesting back then, they were in the 4th division, the money wasn't quite the same 50 plus years ago as it is today. And the footballers of Grimsby Town, to get fit for pre-season, went on the bins. And those bins were really heavy because they were ash bins. They were collecting, you know, burnt material from fireplaces, etc. So for me to be able to get close to the players I idolised was a fantastic day. And it sort of locked me into this particular industry. And then later in life, after I graduated, I joined Leeds City Council. And that was a time when Mrs. Thatcher was putting in privatisation, compulsory competitive tendering. And really it was a mentor I had there called John Atkinson, who helped me develop it in the business. So I was there fighting privatisation, and then I swapped sides to CITA, as it was called back then, the French company who entered the market. And there I was in the industry, and I've been there for almost 40 years since that date. What keeps me in the industry? Well, it's always adapting. There's always things to do. I've just been doing a speech at RWM about the legislative drivers. And, you know, when I get up in the morning, you know, what I'm doing is a positive thing for the environment. I don't think I could do a job that was something negative.
Yeah.
So I think being able to stay in this industry, influence a bit of the thinking around the industry, really keeps me extremely, you know, engaged and wanting to do more.
At SUEZ, you led through huge policy changes, cultural shifts. What were the biggest leadership lessons from that period of transformation?
Well, I think there, Bilal, is about creating a compelling vision. So the vision that I introduced was 3 words. It's always good to have a vision which is quite simplistic.
Yeah.
So no more waste was our mantra. And why do we have no more waste? Because we were shifting the way we saw waste. And it's very funny. You know, I went to Paris to tell them all of this, my French bosses, and they said, "But David, you're a waste company. What are you doing?" This was, you know, beginning of 2008. And so we were very early on in terms of talking about circularity as a major company. Perhaps there were some third sector companies that embraced circularity. But we were the first one really to do that, you know, all those years ago in 2008. And that vision, no more waste, helps shape your strategy. So everything focuses on the diversion of material for other forms of value. And that's, I think, had the most profound effect.
How did you approach changing culture across teams, both in the UK, Scandinavia? Were there differences in leadership styles that you had to adapt as well?
Yeah, Scandinavia was interesting for me. I think that's where I learned the most. I think that formed me as a thinker in this area, as a manager. And their culture is all about consensus. So where the UK is perhaps more hierarchical, leads a little bit with more hierarchical and quicker. In Sweden, it takes a long time to get everybody engaged, everybody on the same page. And, you know, I used my time there to develop that sort of circularity thinking. I think I'd seen the future already, you know, but as I came back 10 years later, I'd seen where we needed to go for. But the basis of having a compelling and engaging vision is still the same. So they take a long time. You've got to get everybody in the organisation understanding, and then it moves very quickly. In the UK, it's a little bit more top-led, and so the direction of travel, as I said, to no more waste, engendered that. Takes a little bit longer, but you sort of get to the same place.
No.
Slightly different cultures, you tackle it in slightly different ways.
Many people think of waste management as a stable, even traditional industry, but your career shows it's one with constant disruption. How do you lead teams through uncertainty and change?
Well, if you don't like change, you're in the wrong business. Because our business is constantly adapting. So say, just talking about legislative change, there's 6 huge pieces of profound changes of legislation coming. And so that's going to affect every part of our business. Yeah. So as I say, you've got to keep adapting. You've got to keep understanding the influence of those pieces of legislation on your company or your particular sector. I think it's my role to anticipate, the CEO's role is to anticipate the changing, shifting sands, and then try and position yourself to exploit those to the best ability. So that's what I tried to do, and that's what I was talking about today.
Everyone talks about circular economy as the future, but what are the biggest myths or misconceptions that you might hear?
Well, I think the first, and it's a worrying, myth, is that we live in a circular world. We don't. It's in the world's economy, only 7% is circular. So you have 93% yet to go. So I would say we're still living very heavily in a linear economy, take, make and dispose economy. Despite all the efforts, despite all the legislation, despite all the influencing even of the corporates, we're still very, very far away. So I think that's a misconception that we're somehow near circularity. We're very much far from that. I worry a little bit that you hear in the world that there's a drawing back from the environmental agenda. You can see that with the influence of America, etc. Perhaps a paring back of net zero as well. That would not accelerate this move that we desperately need to do. We're running out of critical materials, and therefore, if we don't capture them, that will become a significant problem for our supply chains as we go forward.
After decades in senior corporate leadership, you made the leap to founding a new business in CIRQLR. What motivated that decision? How does leadership feel different now compared to when you were at SUEZ?
Well, actually, you're right, because, after 33 years at SUEZ, I ended up as sort of running the European business the waste, which is very interesting for me to do after sort of making the changes within the UK. I set up a consultancy. I didn't want to retire at the time. I felt, there was so much, as I say, unfinished business to do with all this great stuff that's happening. So I was a short stint as a consultant, and then I pitched an idea to private equity. I was working a lot with private equity and infrastructure funds. So I thought, here's my chance to pitch my idea that I've had for a long time, develop a commercial industrial business from scratch. Unfortunately, I had a lot of interest to do that. And as you can see, over the last 2.5 years, we've been building CIRQLR. We'll turn over 150 million today. We'll turn over, in the next few weeks, 160 plus.
Wow.
We've got very good geographical cohesion. Going to add some national capabilities to that, and that allows me the platform to really develop the next part of our story. Clearly, when you're a senior group vice president, whatever it was called, nice title, but it means you're very distant from the business. Right. So I was looking after countries and CEOs of countries. Today, I'm really in the thick of it. I'm getting my hands dirty. I'm on the shop floor, making sort of fast decisions, and that, to me, is that going back in time for my career. Yeah. And I think everybody loves that sort of, giving back to the shop floor, if you like. I certainly really enjoy doing that. So I think that's a massive change between the gulf of very senior management and being a founder and an entrepreneur, I'd like to think.
Yeah, I hear it all the time, from candidates, senior salespeople that are in leadership roles wanting to get back into knocking on doors and so on. So it's quite common. You've spoken before about the need for bold leadership in circular economy. What does that look like in practice? Is it about risk-taking, innovation, collaboration?
Well, I think I go back to my central theme is that unless you've got a very compelling vision, it's difficult to have, that North Star that you're heading towards. I always like to look at and think about the future. So I like to think, what does this CIRQLR, what does SUEZ look like in 5 years from now? So a little bit like the architect is building a house, it can show you the house now. So I try to have that same mental vision myself to create it. So it starts with compelling vision, no more waste for Suez, giving waste another life in terms of circular. And that's both a vision but also a mission. So it's quite a clever way of connecting and making the organisation, despite the amount of communication you have to do, understanding that. Clearly, what I'm doing today on a buy and build is quite risky. There's quite a lot of risk associated with that. Could I manage in a very short period of time to develop a platform? Well, then, you leverage on all your contacts, all your abilities to do that. So I think I've been very fortunate to be able to be in the industry a long time, know a lot of people, and that sort of de-risk that element. But I would say that was a little bit of a risk. The other part, I think, is clearly transformation is about collaboration as well. I think we're lucky to be able to know people who we can collaborate with, which aids my journey to making circular, really a proper player in the not too distant future.
What role does failure or experimentation play in transformation? Are there times, even now, you look back and think, well, that didn't work, but actually we did move forward from it?
Are we experimenting? I think our industry is really about adapting technologies rather than full-out R&D. I think that's pretty rare. You might see that in a university particular sector when you're looking at trying to overcome some of the sort of obstacles of the linear economy. So I think we're far more about adaptation of existing technologies, very much about focusing on the extraction of value from the residual waste stream. I don't have any residual waste assets, so I'm completely free to give the best possible solution to my customers, which I think is a nice thing to do.
What are some of the hard trade-offs between circularity and net zero? Are there times where they do in fact conflict?
Yeah, it's again a very fascinating question. This, because you think there shouldn't be any trade-offs. If we're recycling, that's a good thing to do, and that should be a positive in terms of net zero and CO2. But really, what we're doing sometimes is consuming a lot of energy and then creating a lot of CO2 when we're recycling.
Yeah.
So there are certain products which are easier to recycle, and some of the modulated fees from extended producer responsibility is all about redesigning our packaging, our products, to make it easier for us to capture with less impact on carbon. But you get certain materials like composite materials, extremely difficult to recycle, and they crave too much energy for the sustainable benefit.
Yeah.
So I think that's where the problem of the trade-off comes. What's the balance between the two?
If you have to be brutally honest, what part of the circular economy won't work at scale, no matter how much effort we put in?
I think here you've got perhaps reuse or second-hand products. I'm very pleased to see my kids particularly like, second-hand fashion, etc., but it's on the margin. I think people love to consume. We are consumers by nature, and so we love to buy new. We don't like to lease things. We want to have our own power tools. We don't want to borrow next door's power tools. So I think that's going to be a big problem and a resistance to overcome, this idea that we love to consume, we love to buy things rather than redistribute. So I think that's the area that doesn't particularly work at scale today, despite there's some good examples. But yeah, I think that's the area that I would be conscious about.
What kind of leadership and honesty does the industry need to move past slogans and towards real transformation?
Well, I think, as I say, legislation drives everything, it creates everything. I think one of the things that's a great frustration for the industry is the government have a good idea what they want to achieve, but they never involve the industry in helping them get from A to B. The civil servants are great at creating policy themselves, trying to implement that, go to consultation and finding that people are saying, well, this doesn't work in reality. So a much better way would be to say to industry, this is the outcome we want. We're going to have that outcome, so you've got to help us get to that outcome. I think, by doing that, you'd see a much better form of drafting of policy and an acceptance by the industry and a lack of resistance towards some of this new stuff that's coming in.
Yeah.
Sometimes what they put forward can have some sort of unintended consequences, which you really need to avoid if you want to make a good change.
In 2023, you were awarded an OBE by King Charles for services to the waste and recycling sector. How did that recognition shape your reflections on your leadership journey?
Right, that was a very special day, I can say. At Windsor Castle, I received my OBE, and I had a great long chat with the King. And I had seen back when I was 25 years old, him speaking at this event, effectively, even though it was in Torquay at the time, many, many years ago. And that really resonated. And so I told him about that when I was receiving the award. And we had a really long chat, and they had to drag me off in the end because he's very animated about this subject. So that was really good. So super honour for me, and, the support of my family allowed, and the company SUEZ to do that. I think the journey for me is I've always tried to give something back. So I do my day job. It's a big day job. But I've always, since the very early days, been involved in trying to help shape policy, speak to people, mentor people. And I think that is the memory I have, that I've contributed over the years. And I think that's why I receive the recognition I did.
Well, congrats as well, by the way, on that.
Thank you very much.
If you look ahead 20 years, what kind of leadership will the sector need to truly deliver circularity and net zero?
Well, that's an interesting timescale, because that's past when I've retired. I have promised my wife that I will retire, even though she doesn't believe me.
Yeah.
So I think it's going to be about collaboration. So to get circularity, you need collaboration, because you're dealing across the whole supply chain. I think you'll see much more innovation and understanding between the different parts of the supply chain to really get that circularity. And that's something we're certainly looking and keen to develop with some of our larger industrial customers, where we can help them effectivize and improve the efficiency of their own material use throughout, reducing the amount of waste, because we're not interested in residual waste. So I think it's this cross-collaboration on the supply chain will mean that the waste and recycling sector has got to move and widen its influence and its interfaces with the rest of the businesses that it's serving.
What advice would you give to the next generation of leaders coming into this industry, especially those who really want to make an impact?
Well, I think you have to give something back, whether it's good karma or whatever. Yeah. I've always benefited from giving back. So all the people I know, which is the network which has allowed me to develop Circular, comes from my close working relationship with all different parts of the industry. So I'd say to them, get involved wider than your own day job. Pitch in and support your industry and sector. I think from that you really do get awfully big benefit ultimately in the end. And that's, I leverage that today.
What are some of the biggest challenges you as a leader in the waste industry have faced when it comes to hiring or building like a senior leadership team?
You're only as good as your people, that's for sure. You'll know that better than most. And I'm a great believer that if you have the best team, you win.
No.
So I've got to get the best possible team. So when I'm shaping Circular now, I have to look past my horizon, which is a bit easy. I don't get so worried about succession now because I'm going to retire. Therefore, I'm going to build a team around me and, mentor them through the next 3 or 4 years in order to get them to a super good place, and then allow them to be in the right sort of age category, have the right skills which I'm developing, and then I can pass the baton on to the next generation, which I look forward to do. So I'm looking for drive. Sector knowledge is important, but I look at always the person, what values do they have, what drive do they have? So that's probably the most important to me. Will they fit culturally with my team, with me? And I'm hopefully, touch wood, I've taken on a new management team now, and they are gelling very nice to us.
Yeah, amazing. So I'm just going to finish off in a quick fire round. If you had to ban one material tomorrow, what would it be?
Composites. Because, as I said, they're very expensive and demand an overuse of energy to extract from it. So I think that's what modulated fees will eventually design away, making it a lot easier for us to identify and recycle.
The toughest decision you've had to make?
It's funny because I'm paid to make decisions. So I have to make tough decisions. Probably it's about people. If people don't work out, that's probably the hardest thing. That you've hoped that people would develop in a certain way and they don't, and then at some point you have to take a decision on their future. So that's quite tough.
What book or resource has most influenced your leadership?
Well, I think for me, there's a great book I recommend. Lots of people in management to read. It's called Good to Great by Jim Collins, who did a huge empirical piece of work around what made companies move from good to great. And really what they saw, which is good for you, I guess, is it's all about people and leadership.
Yeah.
And I think, and focus and discipline and momentum. But it's a great book to read. It's very simple to understand. It's backed up by empirical evidence, which is needed, I think.
A leader outside the waste sector you admire?
So this is a bit of a left field. This is Yvonne Chouinard, which is the founder of Patagonia, if you know the very sustainable textile brand. And was absolutely a first adopter of sustainable fashion or clothing. And it remains a driver in environmental change in that particular area. That's been, as we know with fast fashion, is not a great influence on environment. And such is his belief that he's put his company in a trust to tackle climate change. So I think he has an altruistic view as well of the world, which is very impressive.
What's the best piece of advice you've ever received?
Best piece of advice, I think, if I look back, is to join CETA in 1989. Okay. So somebody said to me, John Atkinson said, join CETA. Yeah, they're a big French company. So I thought, well, I'll take the risk. I'll do it. And then, all these years later, working across continents, etc., it was a pretty good piece of advice. The other one I heard I liked was work 4 days for the company and 1 for yourself. Okay. Because I think sometimes you get so engrossed in, your day job that you forget about developing yourself. I always had in the mantra in my mind that one day I was going to do more networking, I was going to learn more, and that ultimately gave, the foundation for me to be able to do the job I do now.
If you weren't in waste and recycling, what industry would you be in?
I'd be in the advertising industry. I always wanted to be in the advertising industry and ended up as a bin man, which is... But I think that I have a great affinity with marketing. And so, I do a lot of communication, do a lot of branding now with CIRQLR. So I still try and keep on the edges of something that, I have, a bit of a passion for.
What's one innovation in waste and recycling you wish you'd invented?
Well, I would have taken a patent for a baler, because balers are still evident from 100 years ago to today, because we're extracting more and more material which needs to be conditioned in order to have onward logistics to make it efficient. So having that means I'd have a long period of time where the money would roll in from that particular patent.
Amazing. Well, that brings us to the end. Thank you so much, David. Really appreciate the time.